Hey there, John with Crow's Nest Craft, and I've had a bit of the hobby burnout slash just kind of all over burnouts. I've had my full-time job and kind of doing my own D&D thing with my ongoing campaign. I've just started playing in a Curse of Strahd campaign, which is really cool because I really haven't been a player in a long time, and I live in Vermont. So if you know anything about New England winters, the first day of summer seems like it's the start of the countdown to the first day of winter. So I'm just kind of rushing to get everything done with like firewood and prepping the house and painting and projects, trying to find time in the middle to have family fun times and friends and, all that kind of stuff. So I've had to push this hobby kind of to the side for a little bit, and it stinks because I miss it. So we're going to get back into it today. I'm going to be turning this dollar store Jurassic World dinosaur. I could be specific to what kind of dinosaur this is, but as you can see, that is pretty hard to pronounce, and if you can pronounce it, good for you. I can't. And I'm not even going to try. I just know it's got these long, creepy fingernails that look pretty cool. What I'm going to be doing is I've grabbed over, honestly, I think almost like a year and a half now, I've been finding these little dinosaur toys at the dollar store. And when they look semi-draconic, I will grab them and I will save them for this project that I'm doing. I've now found about 6 different styles of dinosaur that look kind of draconic, and I'm going to be making dragon wyrmlings out of them. So I got 6 different types, and with little modifications here and there, I feel like I can make them all look different in some sort of way. I would like to do one for every type of dragon. I'd like to do all of the chromatics, all of the metallics, and if I can get that far, all of the gems. So I'm going to start with one of the metallics today because it's my favorite dragon. I'm going to be using, again, pause to read if you want to know what kind of dinosaur that is, but I'm going to be making this little dude into a copper dragon. I'm going to be using some polymer clay, which is also really cheap to make the wings and horns and whatever else I'm going to need for it. So without further ado, let's get started making this guy into a copper dragon wyrmling. Alright, so first things first, we need to make him look more like a dragon. And what's the main difference between a dragon and a dinosaur? That's right, motivation. To fly, because it's wings, obviously. So I'm gonna start by making the wings out of this oven-baked clay. It's cheap and really easy to work with. I'm going to try and make a bit more of a pointed shape for them. For some reason, metallic dragons, especially the smaller style ones like the copper dragons and the silver dragons, where I see them as a little bit more sleek, I imagine them with a sharper style wing over the kind of wing that you would see on a bat or a chromatic dragon. So I'm gonna style them more like that. Now that I have the basic shape of the wings, I'm going to use this ballpoint tool to make creases in the wings and give it a bit more texture so it's not just flat and boring. Now I'm going to do what I probably should have done first, which was remove him from the original base, because I'm going to upgrade it later, and I want to make sure that the wings are going to sit on him properly without that base on the bottom. So I'm going to take it off with this chisel tool I got from a pack at the dollar store. You totally can use the original base, I just really want to make one myself. Alright, so another difference between dragons and dinosaurs, usually at least, is that dragons have horns at the top of their head. I know there are plenty of dinosaurs with horns, but this one doesn't have them, so I'm going to have to make some. I'm going back to the oven-baked clay, and I'm gonna roll out some teardrop shapes and get them ready to be put in the oven. They're the last of the oven baked clay things I need to make, so we're gonna pop these in the oven real quick. Alright, now that everything's cured, I'm gonna glue these on with some hot glue. I'm gonna use a little extra hot glue because I like to use it at the base of the horns and wings to make it look like, folds of skin, so it gives it a little bit more dimension, looks a little more natural. I also like to use the tip of the hot glue gun to smooth it out a little bit. Now I'm going to be making the base out of a chunk of this blue insulation foam. You can pick this up from most hardware stores. It's really easy to work with and you can get a lot for cheap. So I'm just going to be using a box cutter to shape and carve the foam so it looks like a cliffside that the dragon is perching on. Using this texture roller to make the foam look more like stone at the top of it where I'm going to be putting the dragon. Now I'm going to glue the dragon on using hot glue again. I'm going to find a good spot for him and secure him tightly. I also like to use gel super glue around the joints to make sure that it's strong, and I also like to use it for a little extra texture as well. Now that everything's glued together, I'm going to hit it with a black paint Mod Podge mix. This will act as a protective barrier for the foam, and it also just helps keep everything together a little bit better. It also makes everything the same texture for when I hit it with a primer and a paint. Alright, so far so good. We are about halfway done with this guy. We got him sculpted, glued, Mod Podged, and primed. And now we just gotta hit him with some paint. Obviously, gonna keep on making him a copper dragon, so we're gonna do a copper base coat to start. I'm really liking the way he's coming out. I think he's a good size, and I like the way that the wings and the horns kind of blended right in with the model itself, and I really like the elongated claws and how they make it look a little bit more draconic. So let's move on and start the painting process. Alright, so starting with the base coat, I'm going to use a Scale Color brand paint. This is a copper color. I find that Scale Color's metallic paints cover super well. This isn't a branded content or anything like that. I just really like the paint. But who knows, maybe someday I'll get their attention. So when I'm basing stone, I prefer to use blue tones instead of grays. It just makes the end product look a little less flat and adds a little bit of depth. So I want the horns and claws to be a really cool black, but I don't want to just paint them black. So I'm going to start by basing them with a gray. And after I base them with gray, I'm going to hit them with a black Templar contrast paint. This will make it black without being completely black. It'll have a little bit of shade and highlight to it, and later on when I come in and I do my highlighting, it'll make it a lot easier than if it's just a flat black color. I'm going to start the shading process on the copper by mixing up a sepia ink with a homemade black wash, and I'll hit the whole dragon with that. The sepia shade and adding a little extra water will make it look less muddy and give a good shade. Now it's just time for a black wash. I'm going to hit the base with this homemade black wash. The mixing ratio I use is about a quarter black paint, 3/4 water, and a drop of dish soap. Now we're going to start the highlighting and aging process on the copper color. I want to start the highlighting with this gold. I'm going to start by doing some dry brushing and move into some highlighting. The gold is going to be a lot lighter than the copper and will really make the features pop. But I'm not really going to focus on highlighting too much because my favorite part of copper is aging. I'm going to be using this really light teal as a dry brush and do a little bit of highlighting with it to make it look like the copper is aged and oxidized. So sometimes the highlighting and aging can overpower the initial copper tones, so what I'm going to do is go back to the copper paint and get into the scales and the nooks and crannies to bring back the copper tones. The aging can look great, but you still want to make sure copper is the focus color. Now that the copper is brought back out, I'm going to go even darker with the teal and hit all of the edges to really contrast with that copper color. So this darker teal will go on the edges of the wings and the brow. We don't want it to outshine the copper, but we definitely want it to be a strong accent. Now I'm using a color called Arctic Blue. It's almost white, but it's a really cold looking blue. And I'll start by dry brushing the base, and I'll use a smaller brush to go in and do some highlighting around the edges of the stone. I'll then use a small brush to shade inside of the nooks and crannies of the ledge. Starting with a graphite gray, I'm going to slowly highlight the horns and claws, so that way it still looks black, but I'll slowly mix that gray with a white so I can get a gradual shade and highlighting transition. And last but absolutely not least are the eyes. I really like doing eyes. I know a lot of people really have a hard time with it, but I try to keep it simple, except in this case, because I want it to have several colors in there. I'm going to base with a really light orange and then do an outer darker orange to kind of make it look like it's glowing from the center. And of course, being a big lizard, as dragons are, I'm going to make a lizard style slit pupil. And I'll just do that with black. I'll do it very carefully, and then I'll hit it with a little bit of white highlights. I'll just do two little dots of white to make it look like the light is shining down on the eyes. Then I'll give the model a quick once over and touch up, and voila! Look at this cute little guy. I really like the way he came out. These dinosaur figures definitely transferred well to miniatures. There's a surprising amount of detail with the scales and claws. I absolutely love the way that this little toy had the elongated claws in the front. I think it really sells the draconic look. I've made wings and body parts before, but usually when I do that, I can connect them to it and let them dry on the model. Though when I was using the oven baked clay, I obviously couldn't do that because I can't put plastic in the oven. So I was a little worried that it wouldn't match quite right and that it wouldn't transition well, but I think using the glue, it really made it work and made it look a little bit more natural. And of course, my favorite part of painting copper tones is adding the oxidization and the aging. Playing around with the different shades of teal was a lot of fun, and I think it contrasts really nicely with the copper. Hey, thanks for sticking around while I built this little dude. I love the way that he came out. Of course, I'm a little partial because the copper dragon is my favorite of the dragons, and this is a project I've been collecting for a while now. I have a lot of those Jurassic Park toys to be turned into miniature Wyrmling dragons. So, if you have an idea for a dragon that you'd like to see me do, let me know. I think I'm going to do all of the chromatic, metallic, and maybe the gems. I'm not really sure, but there's a few of those other dragons I'd like to hit too, like some of the specialty dragons. I really want to do a purple dragon Wyrmling because I don't really see that much about them, like the deep dragons, or maybe even the rust dragons. But if there's another type of dragon that you'd like to see me do that's from an earlier edition or something like that, let me know in the comments, and I'll take a look at it and see if it's something I'd want to make a mini of. So yeah, tell me your favorite dragons and what you think I should do next for a Wyrmling. But for now, I think I'm going to go with the green dragon next because it's my favorite of the chromatics. So after doing my favorite of the metallics, I feel like my favorite of the chromatics would be, the next best thing. but I don't really have an order that I plan on doing these in. So if you guys give me a good idea, I might do that one next. Thank you for watching. If you haven't followed me on Instagram or TikTok, check me out over there. I got more content, pictures, videos, the whole thing. Again, I have more videos on this channel, so if this is the first one you're seeing, check those out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.